How is it going, guys, and welcome to my Week 6 match in the Pokemon Premier League, where we have Celta Deino versus Portland Timbers. And in this match, basically from my opponent's team, I could tell immediately when it was first drafted that it was going to be a rain team, which meant that there was going to be probably pretty much every game there was going to be Kingdra, Politoed, and Sizzle, so I was pretty much able to plan for those three. I didn't expect a lot from this because I knew the team, I knew how it played, I knew what it was going to be able to bring against me, and I didn't ever feel that worried about it until I got into the team battle screen and I saw that it brought Timburrs and Mamoswine, because those three, those two, they really kind of mess up a lot of my team and what they can do. That Prankster taunt from a Timburrs kind of messes up Bannet, but let me just talk you through my team and what I was thinking. Basically, I wanted to start off with Roserade, because Roserade always does the job for some reason. Whether it be just getting off a crucial Sleep Powder, getting off a crucial Leaf Storm, getting off a crucial something, it always seems to do something. In the last game against Nottingham Forest Curse, what it managed to do was it managed to take out the Excadrill that was going to stop Sylveon from actually doing damage to something. However, that meant that, like, because the Excadrill was gone, Sylveon was able to be a massive threat to Rai's team, and that pretty much meant that Sylveon was meant to just, like, was just able to wreak havoc, and Roserade, it did sacrifice itself in that regard, but it got Excadrill to such a low amount of HP that it wasn't able to be a threat to my team anymore. But this Roserade I bought was full max speed, max special attack, with spikes, because I saw that he had Sizzle, but I didn't really feel that threatened by it. I had a feeling that I could just Fire Punch it or Fire Blast it or something and it would go down fairly easily. I bought Spikes, Leaf Storm, Sludge Bomb, and Hidden Power Ground. Now, the Hidden Power Ground is simply because I didn't have a chance to change the Hidden Power from Hidden Power Fire in the last game, but that doesn't really matter too much to me, but hey ho, hey ho. The reason that I bought Spikes, like I said, was I saw that he had Sizzle and I could just, like, I could Fire Punch something, but I had a feeling that Sleep Powder wasn't going to be as effective as Spikes would have been because he has the Amoonguss, and if that Amoonguss seems to be like a perfect counter to Roserade at the time. It has Synthesis, it has Regenerator, it can sponge up anything I want to do, so it would probably make more sense for me to go and actually get up a layer of Spikes when the Amoonguss comes in, because then if it switches in next time it's going to be taking some damage, so it didn't really make much sense for me to bring a Sleep Powder, and Roserade seemed well equipped to deal with the rest of the team, because the Leaf Storm would have destroyed Mamoswine, would have destroyed Politoed, would have done a lot of damage to Kingdra, Hidden Power Ground would have done a lot of damage to Sizzle, and it probably would have done a fair chunk to Amoonguss because they have Technician, which means that it's a base 90 move, but hey ho, Roserade's there, and that's awesome. Next up we have Hydreigon, which, I don't know, Hydreigon was part of the Triple Dragon threat, and this was probably the first time I've wanted to bring this. Basically, because I have three very offensive dragons, if the opponent doesn't bring something that can really resist and threaten them, they're going to be taking a lot of damage very quickly, so I thought it would be best to try and support them with all of the supportive Pokemon that I had around me. That didn't really work out very well, since they have Swift Swim Kingdra, and Ice Beam on certain Pokemon, Icicle Crash, Ice Shard on Mamoswine, so the Triple Dragon threat's in a lot of trouble here if I can't get rid of those three Pokemon fairly early on. But I still think I can do some work with them. Hydreigon was the first of that, and the reason I have Hydreigon here is because it has really high special attack stat opposed to an attack stat, so I gave it max speed with a naive nature, and 200 special attack, 52 attack. And the moves I gave it were Dark Pulse, Superpower, Draco Meteor, and Flash Cannon. Flash Cannon was simply because I didn't have time to change its moveset around from the last game. Flash Cannon was an oversight in case they brought, Armaldo, because I know that this team did have an Armaldo. It did have an Armaldo in the draft, but I thought that it would probably be a good idea to leave Flash Cannon on in case Mamoswine, in case Armaldo, but now that I think about it, Fire Blast probably would have been a better move, or Thunder or something like that. But I still think that Life Orb Hydreigon, I have Life Orb on it by the way, my 4-Pie Dragon does a lot of damage. It really hits hard, and I just thought it would be more effective to bring that than to bring some other set that I wasn't used to, and I think it did the job. Next up we have Scarf Chomp, the pretty much Scarf Garchomp, and if you've seen my games, you know how much I love Scarf Garchomp. I love it to absolute pieces. It just does the work. It's already strong enough to deal massive damage to anything they want to bring, and it's already got a very good speed stat, but if you give it a choice Scarf, it's able to outspeed so much more. For example, I can actually outspeed that Thunderous now, avoid a Thunder Wave from it, and Oko it with a Stone Edge because of the Scarf. I can avoid a Hidden Power Ice, and it completely shuts down that Thunderous unless it has Hidden Power Ice. But I think it's more effective to bring a Scarf on it in this situation because I can outspeed Kingdra. Because I brought Jolly Nature, I can outspeed Swift Swim Kingdra if it's an attack boosting nature rather than a speed boosting one. But I can outspeed like Swift Swim Kingdra, which is a massive advantage in this. So the moves I gave it were Outrage, Stone Edge, Iron Head, and Earthquake. And I thought it did the job. It did a very good job in this match, and yeah, I mean, this is probably going to be a very close game, so I don't know. I gave it Jolly Nature rather than Adamant Nature because I wanted to outspeed the Kingdra. Next up we have Dragonite, and my lord does this thing hit hard. This thing is probably, it is probably stronger than Garchomp. Like, I gave it max attack with 252 attack, 252 HP, and 4 in defense. And I gave it Outrage, Fire Punch, Extreme Speed, and Steel Wing. Steel Wing was, I don't actually know why I brought Steel Wing. I like to bring Steel Wing over the Iron Tail a lot of the time because Steel Wing is, I don't know, it's a guaranteed 140 base power move on a Mamoswine and an Armaldo, whereas Iron Tail has that nasty chance, that nasty 75% accuracy, and I don't like messing with that. But hey ho. I thought the Dragonite was able to do a lot of damage here. If you look, a Choice Band Outrage is able to 2-hit KO everything on his team. Even Scizor can't stand up to it. Plus I outspeed a lot of the team. I outspeed the Amoonguss, I outspeed the Politoed, I outspeed the Mamoswine because it only has a base 80 speed stat. And I have the multi-scale, so I can possibly and potentially avoid a one-shot from an Ice Shard and retaliate with a Choice Band Outrage. So that is pretty awesome. I also have Extreme Speed. If Kingdra appears to be a massive problem, I can just fire off an Extreme Speed after I've managed to get it low. But hey, I thought that the Triple Dragon threat was well equipped here. I didn't just go in blindly, but yeah. Next up we have Lumineon, and there were two reasons I bought Lumineon. Because of freaking rain, I thought it would be nice to fire off some Stab Scalds and possibly get some burns going. Plus, a lot of this team's going to have water moves. Well, at least I thought they were. But I know that Kingdra has a lot of water moves, and Politoed have a lot of water moves. So Lumineon is able to offer me some nice switching capabilities. Plus, the physically defensive version that I've brought here shuts Scizor down. Completely shuts it down. The most it can do to me is 40% with a superpower, and a knockoff does about, what was it? I think it was 35%? I think it was about 35% max. So I can just recover or scald it to death. The maximum it's going to do to me in 3 turns is about 90%. In that time I probably would have burnt it, and got a Tailwind up, and got a Defog off. If I'm lucky, that is, but genuinely it just shuts Scizor down. I thought that it was probably a clever idea to bring it for that Scizor, and I don't know, physically defensive Lumineon's done me very well so far, and I can't really see myself bringing any other set of it, but yeah, that's just the way it is. And the last member of my team is Mega Bannet. Obviously, I have to bring Specially Defensive Bannet because, you know, it's like my child. I don't know, I just thought it would be able to take a couple of hits from things such as that, a Kingdra, and that Politoed, and possibly the Thunderous if it doesn't have Dark Pulse, and it will be able to just do some shenanigans. Like if I can get a Thunder Wave off on that Kingdra, and if I can get a Will-O-Wisp off on that Sizzle and the Mamoswine, it's genuinely going to help me out. So the moveset I brought here was 252 HP, 252 special defense, and I gave it Thunder Wave, Will-O-Wisp, Destiny Bond, Shadow Claw. At least I think that was the moveset I gave it. No Protect here because I was fairly certain I was able to survive a hit and get a Mega off. But yeah, that's just it. RTK, he's a very good battler. I've watched the game that he played last week because he's the new manager of this team, and we'd been having a lot of problems trying to set up this match. A lot of problems, like because we live in separate time zones, that meant that we have to really be careful about when we can battle because he's got work and he's got school and he's got all sorts of things going on. And at the time I was preparing for a show, and the only time we could battle was 12 o'clock on a Saturday. And on that Friday, on the Friday before we battled, I had actually just gone out for drinks because we'd just finished our showcase, and we'd just finished our show and I wanted to celebrate because we'd put a lot of work into it. That's what the year had been going up to, and basically I had to play this game at 12 o'clock on a Saturday with a hangover, and yeah, I make some pretty questionable plays in it, but hey ho, let's just get into this match and you'll see what I mean. So RTK here is Ishiwakin Challenge, and he's going to lead out with his predictable Thunderous because every rain team has to have some kind of electric immunity. I lead out with Roserade, and I think I can take a move from this thing, so in return I decide to go for a Spikes. But he goes for the Taunt, completely shutting that down, possibly expecting a Sleep Powder. And on the next turn, he switches into UMAD the Sizzle to try and take a Sludge Bomb. I didn't want to go for the Sludge Bomb because I knew that Scizor and Amoonguss were a possibility, so I thought I'd go straight into Garchomp to avoid a Volt Switch from that Thunderous. But he switches out the Sizzle next turn and sends out RT Drizzle, the Politoed, and that gets his Drizzle, his Rain, on the battlefield fairly early on. That's like turn 3 Rain, and that's not bad at all. So I go for the Earthquake here, and that does a decent amount considering I'm Jolly Scarf, not Adamant Scarf. That's a solid 3-hit KO there, even after leftovers, so I'm feeling good about that. So Garchomp has to then come out because I don't want to take an Ice Beam, and I had a feeling it was probably going to go for a Water move, expecting that, so I go into Hydreigon, and he shows he has the Psychic, which was a really strange decision, but hey ho, it works out for me. He doesn't want to then take a Draco Meteor, so he switches out Politoed, and he sends in Tomo's Sun, the Amoonguss, which genuinely I did not like this Amoonguss one bit. If you look at this Draco Meteor, see how much this does. This pretty much showed me that this was not going to be an easy thing to take out, because this is a Life Orb Draco Meteor from a Hydreigon. That did just over half. In the grand scheme of things, that is nothing. That does nothing. And that is not something I want to mess with. So I need to try and take that thing out as soon as possible, because Regenerator is not going to be very nice to deal with. Now, I didn't want to take a Sleep Powder here, so I switch back into Roserade. He sees that coming and pulls a double switch straight out into, oh, what was it now? Yeah, Mamoswine, thinking that he's going to go for an Ice Shard. However, he doesn't go for an Ice Shard. He expects me to switch, and I pulled his bluff and went for a Leaf Storm. And because I have Focus Sash on this Roserade, I felt confident in going for the Leaf Storm. So he predicted me to switch out, so he went for an Icicle Crash, and I've completely pulled his bluff and managed to take out his Mamoswine, one of the few threats on his team. He then goes out into this Thunderous to scare me out, so I switch out into Banette in order to take some kind of special move, and I found out it's an Expert Belted one, which doesn't help because he goes for a Dark Pulse here, and it does so much damage. Yeah, I switch out then because I don't want to take another Dark Pulse and die there, so I go into Garchomp, and for some reason he decides to go for a Taunt, because he might as well have just finished me off there, because I don't get Prankster turn 1. I don't know if you knew that, but hey ho. So now I have a taunted Garchomp with all attacking moves. I decided here to just go straight for an Outrage, because it's going to do a heavy amount of damage to anything left, even that Scizor. It's probably a 3-hit KO on the Scizor, and it can't really threaten me back, so I go for an Outrage here. on the Politoed, and it destroys that thing. Look at it, that did about 50 to 60%, so that's a solid 2-hit KO. He has nothing, he then wants to switch in, so he decides to sacrifice the Politoed. In hindsight, I'm not sure if that was the smartest play by him, because he needs it for his Kingdra, he needs the rain around, and if he can't get the rain up, then Kingdra is just, it's fairly weak and fairly slow. So it's not really the greatest thing. But he does send the Kingdra out now. I don't want to end up taking an Ice Beam from it, so I switch into 1D, kind of to sacrifice it. He goes for the Ice Beam, but this is the power of Specially Defensive Bannet. It lives it with 1 HP. I don't know what set or item this Kingdra was running, but it obviously wasn't that great because it failed to KO a Bannet. And that's like pretty embarrassing. So he switches out there, still not realizing that I don't get pranks to turn 1, and I go for a Destiny Bond there. And this was one of the strange things. I kind of messed up here too, because I thought that if you use Destiny Bond, it works until the opponent attacks you. Apparently not, because I go for a Will-O-Wisp. It unfortunately misses, and it takes me out. It gets Life Orb damage, but the Destiny Bond doesn't take it out. So I now realize that Destiny Bond works until you attack again. I didn't realize that, but I do now. I switch into DDR here, thinking that, well, I know I can deal with this thing, and luckily I get the burn turn 1, which helps me out so much. Goes for the knockoff here. That's not too much damage considering that it's got Life Orb as well. So it's taking burn damage, it's taking Life Orb damage. The only thing that I can do right here is, I thought I'd go for a Tailwind. I mean, screw it, why not? I mean, I have no reason not to. But he goes for a Defog hit. Now, he told me after the game he thought that Defog got rid of Tailwind, and quite frankly that does make sense, but for some reason it doesn't get rid of it. I thought that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing to assume, because it's a wind-based move, and Tailwind, like Defog's supposed to get rid of all that, but it doesn't. So unfortunately he's wasted a turn there. It goes for a Superpower on the next turn after I hit it with a Scold, and that's pretty much the sizzle gone, because Life Orb damage is able to take it out, and Lumineon has completely shut down that sizzle. It's done nothing in the game, and that's at the moment I think 3-0 to me. I think it's 3-0. No, it's yeah, it's 3-1 at the moment. So I go for a Scold, hoping to get a burn off on this thing, and it goes for a Spore. I had a feeling it was going to be able to put something to sleep, and I didn't want to switch in Rose Red because I kind of needed its Scarf around in order to deal with that Kingdra. So he goes for a Spore, puts Lumineon to sleep, gets some leftovers health back, and I didn't want to sacrifice it. I needed something to be sleep bait, if you know what I mean. I needed something to be able to take a sleep, and so that he can't put my Hydreigon, my Dragonite, my Garchomp to sleep. So I go into Hydreigon here, and he goes into Thundurus. I hit the Thundurus with a Dark Pulse, which does about, I'd say that's about 75-80%, and he goes for a Volt Switch, a late Volt Switch, which shows me that this is an attacking nature Thundurus. It's not a speed nature, because I shouldn't have been able to outspeed that, but I did, and he didn't realise it, so he's taken a massive chunk of damage there. So I decided just to go for another Dark Pulse here. Hopefully I could have got a flinch, I get the other kind of hacks, and I get a crit, which it does help me out, because now I can go for a Draco Meteor next turn to take this thing really low down. Goes for a Sludge Bomb, I live it, but I get poisoned, so I can't go for that Draco Meteor now, which it kind of makes up for the crit. So I wasn't salty about that at all. I got some hacks, he got some hacks. I can't really complain about that. So, yeah. Marcelo goes down to the poison, which is unfortunate because it would have been really nice to get a Draco off on that thing. I go into Kolarov here, my Dragonite, and I don't want to lock myself into into Outrage here. So I go straight for the Fire Punch, and he switches out to save his Amoonguss. The Fire Punch destroys this Thundurus. Choice Banded Fire Punch from a max attack Dragonite is going to hurt anything. So, yeah. He then sends out the Kingdra, knowing that I'm probably choiced into this in some way. I don't want to Fire Punch a Kingdra because it's going to do nothing, so I decide to switch out into DDR to kind of, you know, sacrifice it. It's the only thing I had on the team that wanted to take an Ice Beam. And quite frankly, it had done its job, it wasn't needed anymore. Would have been nice to get a Tailwind up, but hey ho. He then switches out the Kingdra, knowing that he's probably may have been a Choice Scarf Kingdra. I'm not sure if that's clever or not, but yeah, I go for a Scold here, but I'm still asleep. So this Amoonguss, it would have been nice to get a Scold off on this Amoonguss to try and hopefully burn it, but unfortunately I stay asleep for the second turn, and it goes for a Sludge Bomb, which is just going to destroy DDR from that amount of health. Stab Sludge Bomb is just going to hurt, and DDR goes down. But it did its job. It did a good job in this game. It took out that Sizzle really well, and I couldn't have been more proud of Lumineon in that game. I send in Purlow here, just to... I'm not even sure. I think I was doing it so I knew it would attack my Garchomp rather than trying to put it to sleep. I think that was my thinking at the time. I had a hangover, like I said, and it revealed that it has Foul Play, which does a lot to Garchomp. I decided to just go for an Outrage here, get some kind of damage off. It didn't look too physically defensive, and that does a lot considering Draco Meteor from a Life Orb Hydreigon didn't do much. It must be specially defensive rather than physically defensive. So it puts my Garchomp to sleep and gets some leftovers health back, but that's nice because I've been able to get some kind of damage off on this thing now. I realise that, well, it's going to just go for Foul Plays now, and I do have pretty much the game at this point. The only things he has left are this Amoonguss and that, but that was Amoonguss and Kingdra, but that was a pretty lucky thing for him there, because if he'd have put my Dragonite to sleep, he accidentally misclicked on Spore there. If he'd have put my Dragonite to sleep, it would have counted as a 6-0 win to me. But luckily I went into Roserade, who's immune to the sleep, and I go for a Sludge Bomb as he goes for a Foul Play, and he said after the game, thank you for not switching in Dragonite, and I wouldn't have minded even if he did, because I mean it is against the rules and that, but we would have just worked something out at that point. So I just take this thing out with a Sludge Bomb, and the only thing he has left is Spray Bay, his Kingdra, so I just go for the Leaf Storm here. I didn't think it would take it out, but I knew it would do some damage, but I get the crit, take it out, and that's the game for me. That means that I have a 3-0 win rather than a 2-0, but quite frankly, as long as I get a win, that's more important. So at that point, all I was going to do was go for a Leaf Storm and then switch in Dragonite afterwards, but it didn't really matter because I was able to get a 3-0, and Roserade did a good job in that game. It got 3 kills with, like, it did a brilliant job. I was so impressed. I expected it to just be a sacrifice lead, but those Leaf Storms really came in handy. Do not mess with a Leaf Storm from a Roserade, but like I said, RTK, I don't think I actually said that at the start of the video. Basically, I'm going to put a link to everything in his channel. I'm going to put a link to his Twitter, his YouTube, everything in the description, so make sure you go and check him out. He's a fun guy, he's a good guy. He came in for Nick, who unfortunately had to leave us for personal reasons, but he did a great job. He genuinely, I don't know, I had no problems with Nick, I have no problems with RTK. They were both really fun to talk to, so go and check out RTK, and he's got some really fun content. He does some good videos on there, and yeah, I've watched some of them myself, and he's alright. So yeah, that's where I'm going to leave you guys. At the moment, I'm just going to quickly have a check of the table. I think at that point, Celta Deino were 4th in the table on 12 points. We have 12 points, and we are 4th in the table. We are behind Borussia Doublade, Parasect Man, and Bayern Munich. At the moment, Borussia Doublade are 1st with 15 points. Bayern Munich are 2nd with 15 points. And Parasect Man are 3rd with 12 points, but they have a higher kill differential. So that's the point. We are now 4th, guys. We are making a massive run on the title, and I think we can get this. With a few more wins under our belt, we can get this done. So that's where I'm going to leave this episode this week, and thank you for watching, and stick around for week 7. Cheers, guys. I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye! Boom!